Okay, that's a song called Aces High by Iron Maiden. It's about the Battle of Britain. I'll be asking that you watch the whole music video for that later. So last class we learned about appeasement, which was the process of trying to satisfy Germany's demands in Europe and avoid war. However, it was clear that appeasement had failed when Germany first threatened war against Poland to take a city called Danzig, which is a free city populated mostly by Germans, right here, and create a route through the Polish corridor, which separated East Prussia from the rest of Germany. Poland refused Germany's demands, and Germany invaded Poland on September 1st, 1939, starting World War II in Europe. The initial invasion was a false flag attack. The Germans dressed up as Polish soldiers and attacked a border station, their own German border station. So Britain and France declared war against Germany on September 3rd. However, they weren't fully committed to war at this time. And the assistance they gave Poland was very, very limited. Poland was expecting that a two-front war would be opened on Germany. However, France only made very limited incursions into Germany. So unlike World War I, Canada was not forced to join this war. We voted to declare war on Germany on September 10th. It was pretty much a foregone conclusion that we would join, but that we got to vote was a significant difference from previous conflicts that Canada had been pulled into. So here's the map of Europe, right on the eve of the Second World War. So we see Germany is much bigger because no more Austria and no more Czechia. Slovakia is now a puppet state of the Nazis. Albania had been conquered by Italy in 1939 as well, which is a part of appeasement that is pretty much not talked about. So Germany used a new strategy to invade and conquer Poland called Blitzkrieg, or new tactic, I should say. Blitzkrieg means lightning warfare in English, and this would be something I would be drawing out on the whiteboard because it's much easier to explain there. So it involves tanks breaking through the enemy line in concentrated formations, and they're helped by dive bombers, which kind of act as a mobile artillery to take out the opponents in front of the tanks. Once they break through, the tanks will then move behind enemy lines to encircle them and meet up with other tank pinchers, therefore creating giant pockets of enemy troops. The tanks will be followed by mobile infantry, so truck-based infantry that will hop out and occupy the land that they have that they've gained, and the slower-moving on-foot infantry will take up the rear and hold the existing parts of the line. So the Polish had a big army, but not quite as big as the Germans, but quite a respectable size. However, their tactics and weaponry were outdated. There's even reports that they used cavalry charges against tanks. So here's a picture of Polish cavalry during World War II. So on September 17th, the Poles were already losing very badly, but the nail in the coffin was sealed when the Soviets invaded eastern Poland in accordance to their Nazi-Soviet pact. So Poland was completely conquered and divided by October. They fought very hard, but there was little prospect of victory, considering the inequality of their armies and what became a two-front war for Poland. So after Poland was conquered, we enter a period that was called the Blitzkrieg, or the Phoney War. It's where there was very little fighting between the Allies. So the Allies are Britain, France at this time, as well as the British Commonwealth, so Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. The Allies mostly just prepared for a defensive war. Britain created things like radar stations, which proved to be a very important technological innovation because you could spot planes in the sky before seeing them. The Soviets did do some expansion and fighting. So they expanded into the Baltic countries here, light green, Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia. Expanded into Bessarabia in Romania, and they invaded Finland. The fight between Finland and the Soviet Union is called the Winter War, and it was very shocking because Finland had a very, very, very small military and population compared to the Soviet Union, but they held out from, I believe it was December to March, before the Soviets had to settle for taking a small amount of Finland rather than the whole country. And the Finnish armies fought very well in that campaign. So in April 1940, Germany unexpectedly invaded Denmark and Norway. The main goal of this invasion was to stop Britain and France from interfering in iron ore shipments that were coming from Sweden up here through the port of Narvik in Norway and down the Atlantic coast to Germany. This was very important for Germany's supplies, so they wanted to defend it. The next step was on May 10th, 1940. The Blitzkrieg was unleashed on the Netherlands, France, Belgium, and Luxembourg. So Germany had initially planned to use the von Schlieffen Plan, which they'd used in World War I, sweeping through Belgium and around Paris. However, a German plane carrying the plans crashed in Belgium over the winter of 1940, and the Belgians delivered those plans to the French, so Germany had to create a new plan. Von Manstein said he would cut through the Ardennes forests right here in the southern part of Belgium, just north of the Maginot Line. The French had built an impenetrable wall on the Franco-German border. The Germans were going to cut just north of that through Luxembourg and Belgium. The French didn't defend this forest very well. They thought the forest would be impenetrable for armored divisions. This proved wrong, and the Germans made very quick work of getting through this forest and cutting the French and British army in two, because the French and British army immediately thought it would be a repeat of the von Schlieffen Plan and went into Belgium. So it was kind of like the hinges, two hinges, the French army down here, the French and British army up there, and the Germans sliced through the middle. Belgium and Netherlands did not fight very well. The Netherlands fell and Belgium fell within a week. The Netherlands thought the canals in their country would defend them. The Germans used paratroopers to hop over them. The French effort also proved very poor. The French army was actually powered about the same as the Germans. Their tanks were better, but their tactics were much worse. The British and French armies got stuck at Dunkirk. It's a movie I'd recommend watching. That's a point right here. They were surrounded. However, the British Admiralty managed to mobilize civilian ships like sailboats and yachts and things like this to evacuate the soldiers that were stuck on the beach. And therefore, over 300,000 British and French soldiers survived to fight another day. So France collapsed after Dunkirk. and officially surrendered on June 22nd, 1940, although it was a foregone conclusion much before then. So the Nazis occupied northern France and set up a puppet government called Vichy France in the south, with the capital in Vichy. While this was all going on, actually around the time that the Nazis invaded Norway, the British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain resigned and was replaced by Winston Churchill. Churchill proved to be a very inspiring leader, and he refused to surrender. At this time, many people in the British elite wanted to reach a compromise with Germany, as well as Hitler. Hitler admired the British Empire and how they ruled all these non-white people so strongly for so many years, and he wanted to keep it in place. But Churchill said that there would be no compromise and no surrender, and he galvanized his island to keep fighting, and some of his speeches and determination are possibly what saved what was Western civilization at the time. Because without Britain continuing to fight, Canada probably would not have continued to fight, the US would never have joined the war, and all of Europe would have been subjugated. So, the next battle is the Battle of Britain. This was the first exclusively air battle. So to invade Britain, Germany would have to get control over the English Channel. That's because Britain had a much larger fleet, so Germany couldn't cross the Channel without air protection to bomb the British fleet. So first Germany was bombing British harbors to try to clear out British boats from the channels. Then they switched to bombing airfields and radar stations so their bombers weren't interfered with. And this was becoming very successful. The British were having a lot of trouble repairing their airfields in time to get enough fighters in the sky. However, one night, a German bomber crew got lost and bombed some civilians in the East End of London. Churchill was upset by this and saw an opportunity, so he called for retaliation bombing of Berlin. Now, Hitler had promised that Berlin would not be touched, so he was furious, and Hitler was a very emotional man, which really interfered with the strategies of Germany. So Hitler instead said that British cities should be bombed. And so from then on, most of the German bombing was concentrated on British cities. This had a very high toll in terms of infrastructure and loss of life on the British people. However, it possibly led to their salvation, because while Germany was bombing British cities, the British could repair their airfields and radar stations and actually get their air defense going. The home air advantage turned out to be very meaningful. The British and Commonwealth pilots, including many Canadian pilots, outkilled the Germans 5-1. This is partly because of the advantage of radar and not having to fly so far. And also, when British planes were shot down, the pilots could jump out, conceivably, and parachute to friendly land, whereas German pilots would be arrested as prisoners of war. So the Germans calculated they had to invade Britain by late September. I believe it was September 22nd. So that was kind of like the crucial day. If Germany could secure air superiority on that day, they could invade. So at that day, it was like the all-out battle. I think at one point, Britain had every single plane and pilot, every single pilot they had in the sky at one time, and they managed to persevere, barely. And the British and Commonwealth pilots were extremely tired. Basically, all they did was sleep and fly and eat. So here's Churchill. So Churchill said of his pilots and of the defense of the Battle of Britain, if the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will say this was their finest hour. And of the pilots Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. And that is the lecture for today. I'll be posting links to watch clips from the film about Churchill called The Finest Hour, as well as the music video for Aces High by Iron Maiden, and a trailer for the movie Dunkirk.